This tomato looks perfect. Then you turn it over, and your stomach drops. A deep crack runs across the skin. The bottom feels soft. And when you finally cut it open, the flesh is pale, watery, and nearly tasteless. There's one thing old-timers did during the final days before harvest that almost nobody does today. And it can mean the difference between a watery tomato and one that tastes like it came straight from your grandfather's garden. They stopped watering. But if you do this at the wrong time, you can damage the fruit, weaken the plant, or lose the entire crop. So today, I'm going to show you exactly when old gardeners stopped watering their tomatoes, how long they waited, and the simple morning test that told them whether the plant was ready. My name is Ron. My wife, Johanna, and I have lived off-grid for more than 40 years. We've grown food through droughts, heavy rain, early frosts, and summers hot enough to send the chickens hiding beneath the porch. And in all those years, we've never paid an electric bill. What I'm about to share isn't some new gardening trick. It's an old method that disappeared when people started treating plants according to schedules instead of watching what the plants were telling them. Because a tomato plant doesn't drink water the way you drink a glass of water. Its roots pull moisture from the soil. That moisture travels through the stem and into every leaf, flower, and fruit. Water expands the cells inside the tomato and helps the fruit grow. When the plant receives moisture steadily, that growth happens slowly and evenly. But when dry soil suddenly becomes soaked, the roots can absorb water faster than the tomato skin can stretch. The inside expands. The skin cannot keep up, and the tomato cracks. You've probably seen those circular cracks around the stem or deep lines running down the side of the fruit. Most people blame insects, disease, or bad seeds. But very often, the real culprit is a sudden change in moisture. Years ago, Johanna and I had a row of heirloom tomatoes growing along the southern side of our old greenhouse. It had been dry for nearly 2 weeks. By late afternoon, the leaves looked tired. I decided the plants needed a generous drink, so I ran water into that bed until the soil was dark and wet. Then a summer storm arrived during the night. By morning, the garden smelled of wet earth and crushed tomato leaves. Water hung from the vines in silver beads. It looked beautiful until I inspected the fruit. Nearly half the tomatoes had split. Some had cracked so deeply that yellow jackets were already crawling inside them. A crop we had waited months to harvest was damaged in a single night. An older neighbor came over later that day. He looked at the ruined tomatoes, pushed 2 fingers into the mud, and said something I never forgot. "You didn't lose these tomatoes because they were thirsty. You lost them because you panicked." He was right. Old gardeners didn't react to every drooping leaf with a watering can. They watched the soil, they watched the fruit, and most importantly, they watched the plant early in the morning. Tomato leaves often droop during the hottest part of the afternoon. That doesn't always mean the plant is dangerously dry. Sometimes it is simply protecting itself from the heat. Check it again early the next morning. If the leaves have lifted and look firm, the roots probably still have access to moisture. If the plant remains wilted in the cool morning air, then it likely needs water. That one habit can prevent a lot of unnecessary watering. But the old method begins long before the first tomato turns red. You need to train the roots to travel downward. If you sprinkle a little water over the surface every day, the roots remain close to the top. That upper layer dries quickly in the sun, so the plant becomes dependent on constant watering. Instead, water slowly and deeply. Let the moisture soak 6 to 8 inches into the ground. Then wait until the upper inch or 2 begins to dry before watering again. Walk away from it. Let the roots search. Come back. Check the soil. Then let the roots search again. This encourages a deeper root system that can survive a short dry period without collapsing. I test the soil with my finger, but a small hand trowel works even better. Pull back the covering and dig down 2 or 3 inches. The surface may look pale and dusty, while the soil underneath remains cool, dark, and slightly damp. That lower moisture is what matters. But here's the part almost everyone skips. Bare soil can go from wet to dry much faster than most people realize. That's why old gardeners covered the ground. We use whatever the land gives us: clean straw, dried grass clippings, shredded leaves, or partially finished compost. Spread it 2 or 3 inches thick around the plant, but leave a little open space around the stem. This mulch protects the ground from direct sunlight. It slows evaporation and helps prevent the violent swing from bone-dry soil to soaking wet soil. And tomatoes love consistency, not constant water. Consistency. Johanna taught me another way to judge moisture when we started growing tomatoes in containers. She would walk past the pots in the morning and nudge each one gently with her foot. If a pot moved easily, she knew it was getting light and dry. If it felt heavy and solid, there was still moisture deeper inside. One morning, I watched her walk past a wilting tomato without watering it. I asked if she had forgotten the plant. She looked at me and said, "That pot still has plenty of water. The leaves are complaining about the sun, not the soil." By sunset, the leaves had lifted again. She was right. After 40 years, she usually is. Now, container tomatoes need special care. Never treat a tomato growing in a pot exactly like one growing in open ground. A small container can dry from top to bottom in a single hot afternoon. Its roots cannot travel deeper to search for hidden moisture. With potted tomatoes, you can reduce the amount of water carefully, but never allow the root ball to become hard, shrunken, or separated from the side of the pot. Stick your finger into the soil. Lift the container if it's small enough. Check it in the morning, not just during the hottest part of the day. And never follow a fixed number of days without looking at the plant. Because there is no magical watering schedule that works in every garden. Your soil may be sandy and fast draining. Mine may be heavy with clay. Your plants may be exposed to hot afternoon wind. Mine may receive shade from the barn. The old method was never about blindly counting days. It was about recognizing a change in the plant's job. Once a tomato reaches most of its full size and shows its first blush of color, the plant is no longer trying to build a much larger green fruit. Now it is ripening what it has already made. The green chlorophyll begins to fade. Red, orange, yellow, or purple pigments appear, depending on the variety. Sugars, acids, and aromatic compounds inside the fruit begin changing. This is the stage when many old gardeners reduced watering. Not because water is bad, because too much water at the wrong moment can increase the risk of cracking and leave the fruit tasting less concentrated. For a mature, healthy plant growing in the ground, we begin by stretching the time between waterings. If we were watering every 3 days during hot weather, we might wait 4 days. Then we check the soil. We check the morning leaves. We check the fruit. The goal is mild, controlled dryness, not severe stress. You don't want the leaves turning brown. You don't want flowers falling. You don't want the plant collapsing against its stake. A slightly dry plant is receiving a signal. A dying plant is receiving a death sentence. Those are two very different things. For tomatoes that are already full-sized and beginning to change color, we may stop supplemental watering for 3 to 5 days before picking. In heavy clay soil, that period might be longer because clay holds moisture. In sandy soil, it may be shorter because water drains away quickly. During extreme heat, the plant may still need a drink. The plant tells you. The soil tells you. Your morning inspection tells you. And this next detail can save an entire crop when rain is coming. People often assume a tomato must remain on the vine until it is completely red. That isn't always true. Once the fruit reaches the breaker stage, the moment its mature green color begins changing to pink, orange, yellow, or red, it can continue ripening after it is picked. At this stage, the fruit has already received much of what it needs from the plant. The remaining ripening process can continue indoors. So if your garden has been dry and the forecast calls for a heavy storm, pick the tomatoes that have begun changing color. Don't stand outside hoping they won't split. Bring them inside. Set them down. Walk away. Place them on a counter, out of direct sunlight, with the stem side down. Don't put them in a hot, sunny window. Excess heat can soften the fruit without improving the flavor. And unless you need to slow the ripening process, don't put them in the refrigerator. Let them sit at normal room temperature. Within a few days, their color will deepen and the flesh will soften. This simple habit has saved more of our tomatoes than I can count. Now, before I show you the final test Johanna and I used to judge flavor before slicing the fruit, there's something else I want to share with you. Many people tell me they would love to live this way, but land is simply too expensive. Later, I'll tell you exactly where you can still find free land in this country. Because growing your own food should not be reserved for people with enormous farms or enormous bank accounts. First, cup the tomato gently in your hand. Don't squeeze it. It should feel heavy for its size, but not swollen like a water balloon. The skin should have a soft, natural sheen. Near the stem, you should smell that unmistakable green, earthy fragrance of tomato leaves and warm summer soil. Press very lightly with your thumb. A ripe tomato should give just a little. Not mushy, not hard. Just enough to tell you the flesh inside has begun to soften. If the fruit has good color, but still feels hard, give it another day or two. If rain is coming, pick it and let it finish indoors. All right, let me stop right here for a second. Because what I just showed you, that's maybe 5% of everything Johanna and I figured out in 40 years on this land. We took every single project, well over 100 of them, and put it all in one place. Water that never runs dry. Power that costs you pennies. A greenhouse that feeds you 12 months a year, even buried in snow. We called it the self-sufficient backyard. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Ron, I don't have the land for that. You don't need much. A little over 1,000 square feet a person does the job. I don't have the money. Neither did we. We did this on almost nothing. I don't have the skills. Well, let me tell you something. I was a city kid, born and raised in Philadelphia. Never grew so much as a tomato before Johanna dragged me out here. If I could learn it, you can too. Today, and today only, they're letting it go for 70% off. That's $37 instead of $128. And you'll walk away with 3 things for free. A guide to finding free land right here in America, a book of old 1900s DIY survival projects, and a full course on growing fish and vegetables together in an aquaponic garden. And there's no risk on your end. 60 days. If it's not for you, send it back. No questions asked, full refund. Johanna and I put our name on that. The link's right there in the description. Now, back to knowing when to stop watering tomatoes before harvest. Now let's cut that tomato open. Watch what happens when the knife passes through the skin. A well-grown, properly ripened tomato shouldn't release a flood of clear water across the cutting board. The flesh should look dense. The seed cavity should be glossy, but the walls should still hold their shape. And the smell should reach you before you take the first bite. Sweet. Green. Slightly acidic. That is the flavor people remember from their grandparents' gardens. But there are times when you should ignore this old method and keep watering. Never reduce water while the plant is still setting flowers or growing small young fruit. Irregular moisture during that stage can contribute to blossom end rot, especially when the roots struggle to move calcium into the developing fruit. Your soil may contain plenty of calcium, but without reliable moisture, the plant cannot transport it where it needs to go. Don't withhold water during extreme heat either. When temperatures climb into the upper 90s and the ground is drying rapidly, plant survival comes before concentrated flavor. Water early in the morning. Water at the base. Avoid soaking the leaves. Give the ground one deep drink instead of several shallow sprinkles. And never intentionally dry out a badly diseased or damaged plant. Stress won't make a sick plant stronger. Remove diseased leaves, inspect for pests, and deal with the underlying problem first. Finally, remember that you cannot control the rain. If the ground has been dry and a storm is coming, harvest every tomato that has reached the breaker stage. For the remaining green fruit, check your drainage. Make sure water cannot collect in a basin around the stem. After the storm, resist the urge to water again simply because the surface looks dry. Dig down. Look first. Then decide. That is the difference between following a schedule and tending a garden. A schedule watches the calendar. A gardener watches the living thing. So here is the entire method. During early growth, water deeply and consistently. Cover the soil. Train the roots downward. When the tomatoes reach full size and begin changing color, stretch the time between waterings. Check below the surface. Inspect the leaves during the cool morning. If the plant remains healthy and rain isn't expected, allow a few days of mild dryness before harvesting. If a storm is coming, pick tomatoes as soon as they begin showing color and let them finish indoors. Always adjust for your soil, your climate, and whether the plant is growing in the ground or in a container. The secret was never simply to stop watering. The secret was knowing when the plant no longer needed you to interfere. For generations, families passed observations like these from one garden to the next. Then we became dependent on printed schedules, bottled solutions, and grocery store produce designed to survive transportation instead of deliver flavor. Little by little, we stopped trusting our hands, our noses, and the living soil beneath our feet. And you have to wonder, why do the big food corporations, the seed companies, the folks who send you that electric bill every month, why don't they want you knowing any of this? There's a reason people are trying to keep books like this one off the shelves. It's not because it doesn't work. It's because it works too well. This week, choose one mature tomato plant and try the method for yourself. Don't neglect it. Observe it. Check the soil. Watch the morning leaves. Reduce the water only when the mature fruit begins changing color. Then compare its flavor with a tomato from a plant you watered normally. If this old method helped you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the practical skills our grandparents understood and the modern world forgot. And tell me in the comments, what tomato variety are you growing this year? And does your fruit ever crack before you can harvest it? I read every comment. In the next video, I'll show you why old gardeners buried a spoonful of something from their coffee pot beneath every tomato plant, and why using too much of it can damage the entire bed. Until then, keep your hands in the soil, your eyes on the weather, and remember, sometimes the best thing you can do for a plant is step back and let it finish what it started.